What's up, everybody? This is Beyond the Pipe with Chris and Sean. Today we have a special guest, Marc Frankel of LongIslandWatch.com. We wanted to have you on here to talk about the fact that everybody collects something. Lots of people collect pipes. A lot of same people collect watches. And I was particularly fascinated by the fact that you have had an online business for over 20 years. And that's pretty amazing. So kind of just wanted to hear your story. So welcome.
Thank you, appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. And I honestly did not know that many people collected pipes. I went to your Instagrams and I was no way. And it
Yeah,
just
there's a
shows
lot of people.
how many niches there are of so many things.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was like, whoa, pipes, like smoking pipes. Like I don't smoke anything, and I was like, wow, that's insane.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of crossover between pipe people, watch people, knife people.
Knife and pens, and guns.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've gotten a lot of my. I can tell a lot of my customers are into that. But yeah, the pipe crossover never came. But honestly, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a couple other watchmakers in New York that I've actually talked to about pipes.
Wow.
Brew and
okay.
Hemmel.
Okay, Hey, Mr. Marvin and
Yeah.
Jonathan. I spoke
Marvin.
to both guys. I spoke to both of those guys yesterday.
Oh, cool. Yeah, great dudes. Yeah, I
Very
actually
great.
made a long church warden pipe for Marvin.
He seems like
really
a pipe
enjoyed.
smoker. That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. Yeah, he definitely is.
I could see it. He's very, definitely.
He's cool. He's cool.
It's a similar collector base too, in the sense that there are like the guys that go for the lower end stuff, and there's guys that go for the higher end stuff, and there's guys that go for the really, really high end stuff. So it's kind of a fun. We were excited to talk to you about all this stuff because it's really similar. I mean, it's.
So I would say it's similar. So there's like an affordable segment.
Oh yeah.
There's a mid tier, a high, and a luxury end.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Chris, he has a world-renowned brand called Morgan Pipes, but he's mostly known for Bones, and he sells like $45 pipes, and a lot of them.
Yeah.
Wow.
All over the world. And so that's kind of your lowest end, but they're still very quality. And what I've really enjoyed about the watch collectors as well as the pipe collectors is most people can appreciate things on every level.
True.
You know, you've got a serious watch collector that might be really into, he's got a nice Omega on his wrist and maybe an expensive Seiko, but then he could really appreciate, the F91 or just a regular G-Shock. And that's pretty typical. You find the same type of people with pipes. A lot of guys, they'll call them beater pipes. You just got your beater watch on for the weekend. Same thing with pipes. It's a lot of similarities in the way people collect and why.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really similar.
So let me ask you this: what about like what you smoke as far as the tobacco? Are there different grades? Is there like
that too?
Oh,
yeah, you could go. I have two
tobacco and a high-end pipe, or the other way around.
I've got two here right now. I've got, although this is a little rarer now, but Sutliff Virginia or Vanilla Custard, which is an aromatic, sort of similar to like what you would think a pipe tobacco would smell like, and then like Germain's Medium, which is higher end, higher quality leaf, pretty rare, more about the nuances. It's this would be more like your, I don't know, what would you call this? Like this is your Bud Light, and this is more like your
like a Scotch,
a finer Scotch.
Got it. Interesting.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a lot of parallels then between the two.
Oh yeah.
For sure.
Between the two industries.
And I mean, it goes. I mean, you can't really get like, let's just say if we're talking like automatic watches, you can't really get an automatic watch for like $45. But like that would be your base. Yeah, your baseline would be like, like the Bones line, these are $45. And I just showed you some of the high end stuff, which bears were, meant, I guess, showing, since we're on video. Sean's got something.
Yeah, we got video here.
I'm going to show something too, since we're on. But,
okay.
You can go from, what I would consider to be middle of the line price wise, but that changes like based on quality depending on the maker, right? So certain makers are going to be, more expensive or less expensive depending on a variety of factors.
Interesting.
But
which is the
What
same
is
with watches. A lot
what's
of
the life
what's
of a
that?
pipe? What's the lifespan? Is it
L-
forever?
Lifetime, multi-generational. Yeah.
See, a watch. See, typically, I mean, automatic watch. You could argue that it is, but it really isn't. I mean, especially the ones being manufactured today, they're
yeah.
almost
I mean,
almost disposable.
if it was repaired and properly
Yeah,
maintained, but it's the same thing with a pipe too. If you take care of it, it will last forever. Typically, your button on your stem will get, like, that's where your teeth go. That will get chewed up. But this is, in a lot of ways a disposable part.
got it.
But the rest of the pipe, as long as you take care of it, it's going to last
Yeah.
forever. And watches can be like that too.
I have my great
But like
grandfather's pipes.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I have one of my grandpa's pipes that I still smoke on a regular basis. My great grandfather was kind of that sort of post depression generation where like
Mhm.
it didn't like quality didn't really survive for a lot
Right.
of this class. So
Got it.
like it was kind of rare to find something nice.
Right.
So he wouldn't have like a Dunhill, which would have been sort of I don't know what would you watch wise you'd put that on like the level of maybe like a what Grand Seiko or something for the time. Like that was like a
Yeah.
nice pipe, but not like the nicest.
Got it.
And that was outside of the affordability of most of these people. So the
Mhm.
vast majority of what he has, and the vast majority of what we had in this country up until I don't know maybe like the 60s or 70s even when the artisan movement started
Mhm.
we just had you just had basic brands. You had K Woody, Yellow Bowl, Medico, and then you had imported stuff from England, and that's where the higher end stuff came from in
That
this
was kind of going
business.
to be my. I know you want to interview me, but I'm
No,
this
let's have
stuff out.
it's a conversation, man.
But yeah, so but you guys are hand making this stuff, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
is that typical of most pipe companies that they're handmade by artisans, or is this like a certain sect? Like there's people that are producing 1,000 a day, on a machine, it's spitting them out however they do it. I don't know, but you guys are more like the real artisanal, you know, microbrewery, I guess.
Yeah.
Of
Yeah. We're
I
doing
mean, you've
stuff
got
from scratch, start to finish, for
yeah,
the most part.
it's kind of a different beast and different price points for the most part. So like an artisan would be somewhere in the realm of like let's say like a professional artisan would be somewhere in the realm of like 350
hmm
to 3,000. That's kind of like that block where a lot of us are. There's some guys that are a little higher than that, and there's
hmm
some guys that are lower than that based on their,
hmm
tenure in the business. But
right.
essentially, most guys will be able to at max make like one pipe a day, give or
Okay.
take. Some
Okay.
guys will
And
take like
sometimes a week.
sometimes a week. I mean, I used to take a lot
Yeah.
longer on my handmade stuff, but then you
hmm
have like the the mass produced stuff is generally Italy because that's where the
Okay.
wood is. So
Got
you
it.
would have guys that you'd have like a team of maybe 10 to 15 artisans or
hmm
skilled workers that would be
Got it.
taking a process, and
Right.
that's where these come in. Like all my factory lines, those are all made in Italy. We've got like
Got
18 guys and they're just boom boom boom, and at the end of like 2 weeks you get 1,000 pipes.
it. Got it. And
So
So
kind of
you're
like with watches, if there was
yeah.
a smaller factory that was putting together watches, like
Right.
there's a small maker in Kyoto, Japan right now that
Mhm.
is, he's not making the movements, but he's assembling everything, and
Oh,
it's beautiful.
Kuro or whatever.
Yeah, Koyo? I'll have to
Nikoyo
look it up.
Kuro. I know who you mean. He was
Yeah,
at I
beautiful
saw
stuff.
him at New York's wind up.
Oh, really?
That guy was slammed. I saw him. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, beautiful stuff.
Yeah.
Those linen dials he put out lately were just gorgeous.
Super cool.
So,
So are
yeah, so
you
think of a pipe factory kind of like that. You've got
interesting?
a handful of skilled guys that are putting together these
Got it.
pipes
Now
in
are there
various stages.
Are there commission units?
Not typically with a factory. Commissioned, that's what people come to us for.
Got it.
yeah,
So they'd want something specific that wasn't a serialized shape.
Got it.
yeah, the
Cool.
closest thing to an actual factory that would do something like that wouldn't do any sort of commission work. Like you might get something special through
hmm
like there's a company called Castello,
hmm
and you might, know a guy who knows like one of the guys, and they'll be like, "Hey, I found something really cool," and you might have access to that before anyone else. And there's a
Right.
long, long line ahead of you usually for
Got
that.
Yeah.
Amazing. And
Yeah,
let me say, how many people would you say there are in the U.S. that do what you do?
That make pipes?
Yeah.
like professionally.
There's
Yeah.
probably a couple hundred, like, people who just dabble in this.
Right.
I'm only aware of about 8 to 10 that
Mhm.
truly do this full time.
Yeah, I would say it would max
Chris
out
and
at
I
like
are,
20.
Wow.
yeah, at the very most.
Yeah,
Not many are
definitely
doing
very
it
small.
as their full time thing.
Got it.
But I ship pipes all over the world. So does Chris,
Right.
and so that part of it is actually fairly large, like the community is.
Got
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I don't know. The thing is, you have all the vendors. I'm trying to think of what it would look like at a show. Like there's probably, I don't know, like 30. Like it's hard to say because they
It
fall into
is.
such different categories. Like there's some guys
Right.
where you're like, this isn't this guy's full-time gig. Like for example, we have a fellow maker, Jody Davis, who is in the Newsboys. So he's
The band.
like a rock star,
Got it.
but then also he makes pipes. And you're like, well, is this his full-time gig? So you
Right.
have to
Oh, yes,
classify in
right.
those terms.
Yeah. Most
And then
shows, there's 200 to
yeah,
300 tables worth of vendors, and that's pipe makers, pipe
Mhm.
resellers, tobacco vendors, all sorts of stuff like that
yeah.
Wow.
at most conventions.
That is.
That's big, by the way. That's at the
Yeah,
Chicago
that's
show.
a bigger one.
That's the biggest in the
That's the big one.
States. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
But if you were to compare that to like Dortmund, Germany, which is like the industry show, that'd be sort of like your SHOT Show, Blade Show, something like that. But it's
Mhm.
like your global show.
Yeah.
I don't know how many tables are there, but there's full kiosks. Like it looks like a car
Got
show,
it.
but
It's
for
like the Super
tobacco.
Bowl.
It's
It's
huge.
Basel. What
But it
Basel
has
used.
everything. It has
Right.
everything. It has like if it was a horology show just in general, that's kind of instead of wristwatches, it would be like we have grandfather clocks and we have digital clocks and
Got it.
we have,
Mhm.
a
And
company that
everything.
just sells like the hands and there's a
Right.
company that just sells the movements and it's
Got it.
and it's a convention center that's full of these people.
Very nice.
Yeah. So,
Right.
Mark, tell us about Long Island Watch. Where did you start?
I'll tell you, it's not as interesting.
That's fine.
I find it interesting.
You know why? Because I don't know about it, what you guys do, so I find it fascinating to learn about stuff. So tell you about it. So I started the business, around 22, 23 years ago, as a hobby of sorts. And the way the story goes is I graduated from school and I was working as an engineer, mechanical aerospace engineer. And this is back in I think it's like 2000 or so. And I went out to lunch with a bunch of my friends who I'm still friends with all of them. We're all in a text string. And one of them was wearing a watch that it was an automatic. It was an open heart, and open heart at 12, which means you could see the balance wheel, spinning back and forth.
That's cool.
And I was really taken by it. And I'm like, that's a really nice. I've always loved watches. At that point, I didn't own a ton, but I probably had 4 or 5 watches. When I was a teenager, I was buying watches. I was 12 years old on vacation with my parents. I bought a Tissot in Grand Cayman for like $60 and, this and that. And he's like, well, I bought it on eBay and it was like $80. And I thought it was a tourbillon. I really didn't know too much. I mean, I know a decent amount. And for some reason, I was like, wow, I could sell that. You bought it for $80. I'm like, it's worth more than that. I could sell that. I'm like, can you tell me who you bought it from? And he gave me the seller's name, and I looked the guy up on eBay, and we developed a kind of a relationship. I bought 10 watches from him. I asked him, can I buy them and just resell them on eBay, just like you do? And he said, absolutely. So I bought 10 watches of a different watch, and it was $700 for 10 watches, so $70 each. This is back in, I guess, the early 2000s. And I got them all, made my listings, made my photos, and I sold them. And some made a profit, some made a loss after I took all my expenses into account with eBay and shipping and stuff.
All the
But at
fees
the
and
end, I
all that.
made money. And I was like, wow. I'm like, that was pretty easy. Well, not easy, but it was
Cool.
cool. Well, let me do that again. He's like, I do it again? He's like, yeah, go ahead. He's like, I have other watches too if you'd be interested. And then that's kind of how the hook started. I started on eBay. And then a couple of years later, I started a website. That's like 2003. I built it on Microsoft Front Page myself after reading a book, Front Page for Dummies. I knew nothing about shopping cart technology or anything, and I kind of stumbled my way through it. And that's kind of, just take that and, kind of just go through history,
The rest
for
is
20
history,
years.
yeah.
It just kind of kept doing the same thing and more brands. I was working as an engineer full time, and I left that career in 2011. So I was in it for 13 years, and I stayed home to run the business full time. And then
It's a great feeling, isn't it?
Yeah, it was a scary feeling, but it was a good feeling. My wife was working. She's a CPA, so we had health insurance through her because we had a child. Actually, at that point, we had almost 3, and there wasn't, a fear of health insurance. But I was making good money. I didn't leave until I was making my engineer's salary. At the end of the day, and it was good. And then fast forward another 14 years, and here I am now. And it's just I kind of do the same thing I did back then, just on a larger scale, and I have more people, and just sell a lot more watches, and have my own brand and stuff like that.
Yeah, and your own brand is Islander, which you started 5 or 6 years ago. Is that correct?
Yeah, September of 20. Hey, thank you. September of 2019. I'm wearing one also.
Nice.
I started. ISL 36. Very nice.
Islander Brookville. I love this thing. It has been my most worn watch in the last 2 weeks.
I wish I had gotten the regular Brookville, not the upper, because I feel like the upper is a little too big for me. But
okay.
I got another one. I'll trade you.
I have little baby wrists though, so nothing fits on me. I'm a 38 mil guy usually.
Oh, okay, that's okay.
Yeah,
it's funny because I'm more of a larger guy. Like this is a 42, 43, and I have small wrists. I just anyway. I started the brand in September of 2019. I had become known for being a big Seiko dealer. Pretty much all gray market at that time. And
so like Joma Shop for the States.
Yeah, well, Joma Shop is in the States, right? But
is it? Okay.
Yeah, they're in Brooklyn. They're in the Brooklyn Navy Yards. I was starting to sell a ton of a certain model called the SKX 007, 009. It was this kind of culty diver. Not a big watch for Seiko. People think it was tremendous for them, but it wasn't their core business. Their quartz is their core business. Yeah, absolutely. Automatics are.
That's surprising. All anybody talks about when you get into automatic watches is you got to get an SKX.
Yeah, no.
Okay, that's fair.
Randos off the street that go to the mall to buy a watch, they never heard of it.
Well,
anyway, so yeah, I was selling a lot of them. I was selling, about 3,000 or so a year, and 2019 in Basel, so it was like April or May of, maybe it was March, whenever Basel was. It was March 2019. I learned that they were discontinuing the line, that whole series, and I knew that was going to be detrimental to the business. So I was like, you know what? I'm like, I know what people want. They want the SKX, but they want all the upgrades. They want sapphire, ceramic bezel, hand winding, hacking, solid bracelet screws, the whole 9 yards. Everything that they were buying their SKXs, and then they were just modding them up the wazoo.
Yeah, you couldn't buy an SKX with all that.
Yeah, so you had to mod it, and you had to wind up spending like $500-$600. So I was like, you know what? I knew what the new replacement for that watch was going to be because they had showed it to me, and I knew it was going to fall short of what people wanted.
Yeah.
So I said, hey, you know what? I'll just make my own version, an homage, if you will. However, it was a discontinued watch, and it was better, arguably, and it was cheaper. So I did that, and that's how the line was born. And so that was September of 2019.
That's awesome. And you still sell that model?
Yeah, well, now. Models. That was model numbers ISL 01 and 02. 01 got phased out 2 years ago. 02, I still make. I just sold out of it again, but I still make it. And our highest number is like right now ISL 300 and I know there's
Wow.
301 that's
Wow.
in stock.
That's a big catalog.
It's a
Yeah.
big catalog. I mean, we sunset a lot. The live count is typically between like 16 to 80 SKUs. And grow. It ebbs and flows during the year as
Yeah.
we kind of get rid of one, get rid of some, reorder others, figure out what we're going to sunset. But yeah, that's so the brand is over 5 years old at this point, and it is it's definitely my primary focus. I still
Yeah.
sell 30 some odd other brands in the store, but Islander is the one that certainly gets all my attention because it's the
Yeah.
one that makes
That's
the
awesome.
most money, to be honest, because I manufacture it, so I control the margin.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
it's
great.
been
That's
fun.
very similar to how Chris does things because Chris, you've got something like 300 SKUs
Oh,
and roughly have 50 or 60 at a time
I've
live.
just for the Bones line, I think there's 450 different shapes now, and some of them don't come back because of supply. Usually is the reason.
Right.
Because they're based off of. So the Bones line is based off of previously discarded seconds as well as
Okay.
first quality. So from time to time, there's like something from my guy's catalog, and they just overrun some, and they'll send me those
Got it.
just because they're convenient. All of that is based on the size of the briar too. Like if there's a particular block that just happens to fit a shape, they'll say,
Just
okay, well
works.
we can do these, and we'll blow them out, and then we'll send them to you. And that is typically something like that shape because it's a smaller
Right.
piece.
Right.
And then sometimes they'll have something really weird, like like this, and this is not a normal shape, but
Right.
they'll have overruns of this shape, and then they'll find, they'll put on a fancy stem and call it a
Right.
day and ship them to me.
And
But
yeah,
um, yeah, I guess I would be kind of in the same position though, because you do have to manage a lot of SKUs, and then you have to also deal with people saying, "Hey, when is this
coming back.
XX coming back?" And you're like, "I don't know, dude." Like,
Yeah. I know, but a lot of times it's someone says, "Is this coming back?" I usually know if I'm going to do it again. But if I'm going to do it again, I typically have to make a minimum of 50, sometimes 100.
mhm.
And
Yeah.
if I think I'm going to get it and only sell 10, I'm kind of like, well, I'm not going to buy 100 of them.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's a balance. Colors. Might be a line like you're wearing a Brookville. You're
Mhm.
both wearing Brookvilles. Um, it, the on the upper Brookville, the blue dial is the only one that's sold like really, really well, which is why a
Really?
lot of the other ones went on sale. So it's also finding out what people have an affinity for. They may like the watch, they just don't like the color.
Yeah.
And guess what? If you don't like the color, it still sucks. The watch isn't going to sell.
Yeah.
You have
Yeah.
everything else about it might be perfect. Doesn't matter. It's the color. If
Yeah.
it's the color,
I
then
really like the texture on this face. Like at first I
so do
wasn't
I.
sure if I would like it because I'm like, oh, it kind of looks like it's hard to read at certain angles, but then I'm like, no, it actually gives it more character. It's more
Yeah,
interesting because it has that.
it's called a birch dial, so it's meant to look like
Let's
wood.
see if it comes through.
Yeah, it's super cool. It's a great texture,
There. You can kind of
and
see it.
it took us a while to get the texture right.
It's pretty
In the
neat.
light blue, it really comes to life.
Yeah,
Um,
I can see that.
but
What
yeah,
about the white in person? I was looking. I almost pulled the trigger on a white birch
oh, the
dial.
294, the white ivory dial. Yeah, that's like the only
Yeah.
one that's left of the whole setup.
Is it really? It
Mhm.
looks so cool on the pictures. Like, it was another question of, am I going to be able to see that texture as well in
Yeah,
person,
it
or the
pops.
pictures? Okay.
Yeah, usually the lighter colors, the texture tends to pop a little bit better. It
Yeah.
throws the light a bit. But again, these are all things that also, you get a sample and you like it, and it looks good, and then you get the rest of them in, and you go, oh, I don't know.
That's not it.
Yeah.
I thought it looked nicer when I had a sample 60 days ago.
Yeah.
That's live and learn, I guess.
So how does that process go? Let's just say, from design, from idea to product. I mean, you can go as deep or as shallow as you want on that. How do you
Yeah, no,
start?
I mean, people think it's like this long, drawn out, formal process, and maybe in some companies it is. But when it's us, It's very informal. It depends what we're doing, what factory we're using. But to give the best picture of what people I think imagine it is when that process happens, it's a designer sitting down with like a graphic artist and just kind of going through ideas. Hey, what do we want? What do we want to emulate? What do we want to do? What do we want a case shape to be? And you start refining it, and you get there, and then just like you would think, you get a dial and a hands together. Obviously, there's a lot of inspiration. It could be an inspiration from a car. It could be
Okay.
inspiration from another watch. It could be anything. And, eventually you get somewhere where you have either a 2D or a 3D rendering of a watch. Get a prototype made. 60 to 90 days typically. Approve a prototype.
That's
then
cool.
another 60 to 90 days for production. Or don't approve the prototype, and then you just wind up in this circle where you will literally never get anything. I almost always approve a prototype because I'm like, I just don't want to sit and wait for. I don't want to say to scooch this a little bit because I just can't wait.
Yeah.
That's one of my issues.
Because you're excited about it.
Same
Yeah,
here.
well, I also just want to get it out, and there's a certain. You look at the calendar, you look at the year, and you're like, well, I want to have 5 or 6 releases this year, or maybe I want to have more than that. And everything's got to fit the schedule. I mean, right now, I think we planned that if we released a new watch every 3 weeks, we're good until I think October.
Wow.
Which is, we
That's
have
a lot of watches.
There's a lot. We were very busy late last year, and a lot of inventory came in. Like, we released the Astoria watch this past Tuesday, which is a dress watch. It's a tonneau, it's a barrel shape design. And that was definitely out of the cookie cutter for us. Like, totally different. We've never done a non-round watch, and it took off. It did fantastic. I'm already looking at.
And that's the one that's like a tank, but kind of.
It's like a tank watch tips. Yeah, so we call it a tonneau. It's a barrel, so it's like that.
Okay.
Right? It's like 34.
Yeah, and you had a
it's a
white dial, a blue dial, and a black dial.
White dial, blue dial, and a black dial. And the white dial is almost sold out already. So
that's so cool.
Who the hell knows? Blue dial or the black dial though, which is typically black dial. I'm sure it's the same with you guys too. There's typically something that always does best.
Yeah.
With watches, it's typically black dials. On this one, the black dial is the slowest selling.
So we've seen interesting trends over the years, and I'm sure you can see the same thing with watches. Where for a long time, like the really high end stuff, you would only ever have a black stem.
Okay.
Because it's just it's classic, it's traditional, it's meant to be that way. But then as newer collectors come in, they want things that are a little more crazy, and they might want some weird acrylic that's got 5 different colors on it that looks cool to them, and me as a maker might not think it does, but they'll buy it. And what I've learned over the last 12 years of making pipes is I don't have to like anything I made because somebody will buy it. Somebody's going to want it no matter how it looks.
Yeah.
And I just try to hone in, what direction I want that to go. And if I want it to be, funky looking or classic looking.
Right. One of my first run-ins with something like that was, maybe on like my second or third shipment from this guy that I bought watches from originally. I read. Eventually, I just went to his eBay store and I saw a whole bunch of things. And I would give me 2 of these, 4 of these, 2 of these, blah blah blah. And the order came, and I open it up, and there's 2 of the watches are wrong. They are 47 millimeter. This is back in early 2000s.
Oh, really?
So big watches.
That's a big watch for then.
Yeah, so it's a 47 millimeter bright fire engine red dial with a coin edge bezel. Like an onion coin edge, and I mean, ugly as sin. Powered by an ETA movement. And I said to him, I said, I didn't order these. I ordered a different SKU. I'm very sorry.
8 millimeters smaller.
You could send it back if you want, and we'll swap it out. And I already paid customs on it, this and that. And I was like, you know what? I'm like, let me just try to sell it. They were the fastest selling watches I have ever had up until that point. It was crazy.
No way.
They would put them up, and boom, boom, they were gone. And that's when I learned you don't necessarily have to sell. Don't sell what you like.
Yep.
You have to sell what sells.
That's exactly how it is in pipes too.
Half the things of what I sell. I mean, maybe even more than that.
Yeah.
But that's not. I'm not in the business for me. At the end of the day, I'm in the business for the customer.
Yeah. It takes a while to recognize that. I had a shape that came in initially, they called the big tulip or the tulip. And it's essentially like, if you can imagine, well, you have to know how these things are made, but essentially you have, the chambers are drilled and it goes onto a phrasing machine, which is like a copier, but like it's like an old style gear driven CNC machine kind of.
Uh-huh.
And you'd
It's like
have
200-year-old equipment.
Yeah, and then it would spin and it would cut. There would be a stylus on the model, and then there would be a cutter
Like
on
a
all the others.
like a rose engine.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Make dials like that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No. Same kind of thing. Yeah. Okay.
Oh,
I
cool.
didn't even think about that.
O'Shea is on a rose engine. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what you're left with is like this like base piece that can't be trimmed, and then that's trimmed by hand. And so I had a ton of these that they sent over because I was busy at the time. I didn't have time to check. Usually I'm just like, yeah, go for it. Kind of like, yeah, that's the prototype. Great, good, send them. And so I did that, and I'm like, what the hell are these? I pull them out. I'm like, these aren't going to sell, guys. Like, I can't sell
They're
these.
not
These
even finished.
they're unfinished pipes,
Right.
basically. And I was like, you know what? We're going to make some lemonade. So I was just like, yep, big tulip. This is a new shape that we've got. And they sold so freaking fast. And I couldn't figure out what it was because it's just like a honking piece of wood.
Right.
But that's what people wanted.
But it's different.
It's different. And it's, when they were gone, people were like, do you have any more? And I'm like,
when's it coming back?
I'm not bringing those back. That's, ludicrous. And I did. And people bought them up again.
Right.
You never know.
No, you don't. You never know. Yeah.
So one thing I've always been fascinated with watches and pipes is when you're talking about buying from an artisan, it's very similar to the experience of getting yourself a good watch from a micro brand that's reputable, like Island. You're getting much more value for what you're paying for.
Yeah.
Typically. Like with let's say Seiko as a very, most people are going to know the brand Seiko. You've got to spend quite a bit of money with them to get a solid stainless steel bracelet with solid end links and sapphire and everything like that. When you're talking about buying from an artisan pipe maker, you're getting a handmade stem. You're getting all the full engineering on the inside of it, being perfectly funneled out. You're getting custom, you're actually also getting a custom order a lot of times if you wanted it to be a certain color or whatever. But you're getting better finishes a lot of times than just buying from a factory.
Right.
So you could say that like Peterson pipes, which is very world renowned, would be like buying a basic Seiko 5.
Got it.
And then buying something from us would be very similar to buying something from you with Islander.
Got it. Yeah, makes
sense. You
sense.
just get a lot more.
Right. Well, you're not, you have less costs.
Mhm.
There's nobody in the middle, typically.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you set your own prices.
Yeah. And then the market speaks, and if it doesn't sell, it's either crap or it's too high of a price or timing isn't correct.
Right. So where do you guys typically land up in price compared to mass market stuff?
Kind of a different animal.
It's a different thing altogether, but usually a couple hundred more on average.
Okay.
There's no real comparison between factory and artisan though. Like what you get from like even like I have a nicer line that I would probably say would be like Savinelli competition. So it would be like your mid-level, low to mid-level type. Well, factory would be like mid-level factory.
Got it.
And it's, hits the same standards as any of those other mid-level brands. But I would say significantly cheaper because it's just me. Like I just have to pay my guys and we're done. Like I don't have to deal with a marketing team, and all this other middling type stuff that happens. So I think that's almost a better explanation of it because you've got, Savinelli or let's say even Peterson, which would be, like Seiko, and then you would have, Blackjack would be more like, what Marc's doing.
Yeah.
it really all that's required is like the customer base, right? So, but price wise, between like what we're doing is handmade. Like I'm not familiar with the upper echelon of watchmaking to where these watches are made by hand, like an artisan would make them, like a Jacob and Co. or something like that. Is that
Yeah, kind of, but yeah, kind of.
more like the watch is bespoke? You know, when
Yeah, yeah, I get it. Sure.
you know, like where someone is actually like pressing out the hands or like
Right.
they're milling out a custom case and they're
Right,
cutting
like a master watchmaker making a one of kind of piece. Problem with something like that
Mhm.
is that,
yeah
where maybe you could knock out a pipe in a day,
yeah
a custom watchmaker, if he's really making a piece, he may spend a year on a watch.
yeah and
On one.
it's like a $500,000 watch, right?
It's like a $500,000 watch. That's
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah.
So, what is your most worn watch?
Wait,
Do you
go
have?
back.
I don't
Hold
know
on.
what size your
Back to
collection
that.
is.
I want to go back to
Okay,
that.
okay.
Hold on. We touched
I'm
on
getting
something.
excited.
No, this is okay. Hold that question. Hold on, Mark. Explain more about that. Like how that. I mean, you would know more about that process than I would. But
Hmm?
I've recently, and I'll give more context. I've recently gotten into these like watch repair videos.
Yeah.
You know, what's the name of the guy's account, Sean?
Wristwatch revival.
Yeah, and I'm just sitting there, and like the other night, I was like, I think it was last night. I was like, you know, I want to watch something, just chill out for a bit. I've been working too much lately, and I have to like sit myself down and just chill. And I'm watching like The Recruit on Netflix. I'm like, this is boring. So I turn it off and I look on YouTube. And I'm like, oh, I'm gonna watch this. I watched the guy restore like an old Pepsi Rolex,
Yeah.
and I'm sitting there just like, you know, like just the amount of pieces, and that's a
Yeah.
Rolex. That's a not mass produced, but a sort of mass produced watch, right? Like,
It's mass produced.
yeah, I'm fascinated by the not mass produced, like the dude in his
Yeah.
shop tinkering around in
Yep.
Geneva making like some crazy
Yep.
timepiece.
Yeah, there are like really super complicated pieces, that maybe Paddock will, commission or something,
Yeah.
and it'll be a team of watchmakers, and they will work, they'll design for 6 to 8 months, and then they'll spend a year producing the parts, assembling, testing, this and that, and yeah, but the watch will sell for $3 million because someone commissioned it, kind of thing. That's how they
Gotcha.
make their
Amazing.
money.
That's
But yeah,
amazing.
absolutely.
They're doing
It's
one watch. They're not making
They're
like
doing one
10.
watch. They're not making no. I mean, Paddock makes watches. They
Yeah.
make mass produced, but they are making them all by hand. I mean, they're all assembled by hand. ALS makes them all by hand. A lot of those guys, they make them by hand.
Mhm.
You have to really, like, I know I've seen videos like Omega actually is assembling watches by machine, which is, it's impressive to see it happen because it is
Yeah.
real, refined work. But yeah, that is the real craftsman end of it, where they're they're hand filing, the screw heads to get the right bevel on it so the light catches it in the correct way. They're bluing screws.
And we're talking screws that are like
cutting
half a
stems. They're
millimeter.
cutting screws. Watchmakers' lathes, are insanely detailed. They're making a screw that you can't even say what the thread is. It's beyond quadruple zero. It's basically a needle with a couple of threads cut in it. But the crazy part is that they were making those screws 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what's always fascinated me about
That's
it. Like,
the age is really a big issue for me. Like I don't know if it's a joke, maybe it's like a lame bit, but Sean and I were talking on a previous episode, and I was like, watches are kind of fascinating in the sense that like we're at a point now where it's gotten kind of silly. Like, we had in a town 500 years ago, you would have a clock that was like 20 feet across on like
Right.
a big stately building or a
For
church or
everyone to
something,
reference. Yeah.
right? And everyone sees it, and hey, that's the time, and that's it. And you have the bells tolling for
Yep.
whatever time it's set to. And then it's
Mhm.
like someone, is like, wait, I want one of those, but I want it in my house. So they make the,
Right.
grandfather clocks and the mantle clocks and stuff. It's like, but
Right.
that's not good enough. I want it in my
One
pocket.
on my wrist. Yeah.
Right. And then I want it on my
Yeah.
wrist. And then they started doing the freaking ring watches, which are like,
Yeah, I saw that too.
And then at this point, it's like, well, we've perfected this thing. Let's make it more complicated. And it's the only thing
Yeah.
that's like,
Yeah.
it's been done. We have automatic watches.
It's backwards.
It's gone backwards.
It's done for the love of what it is, and
Yeah.
that's it. Because again, it just goes back
Which
to
is really
the
cool.
stupid thing that my kids say: "Why would I wear a watch when I have a phone?"
Yeah.
And it's just an appreciation. See, I guess for you guys, it's different because you can't get the joy or the whatever it is from smoking tobacco from. It's not like you can pull out your phone and you get the same thing.
Yeah. There's no
Yeah.
digital copy.
It is different, right? There's no
Yeah.
digital analog. There's no.
Yeah.
But with watches, there is. So you has to be an appreciation for it.
Mhm.
But it exists in many different areas. I mean, you could buy cheap shoes, or you could buy fine, craftsman handmade leather shoes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Clothing goes the same way, and people just sometimes enjoy thank goodness, a nice watch, or they want an
Yeah.
automatic, which, as you said, is. I mean, they're totally, even the most expensive Patek, Rolex, whatever, is nothing compared to a $10 Casio.
Yeah.
It's
The
Yeah.
nowhere near.
Not as
G-Shock
accurate.
is that's
It's
the
no. I mean, yeah.
that's the problem I had. Like because I had an Apple Watch for years, and prior to
Mhm.
that I never wore a watch. Like I had a watch in high
Right.
school. I think it was like a Quicksilver or a
Mm.
Citizen or something.
Yeah.
At the time, it was really
Quicksilver,
cheap.
sure. I remember
Yeah,
them.
and then I got the Apple Watch. I was like, oh, cool, man! It tells you like what your pulse rate is, and
Yep.
it records your steps. And over time, I was like, I'm pretty active, man. Like I move around a
I
lot.
don't
I'm
need it.
doing stuff. I don't need it. This is stupid. Like so I kind of started distancing myself because it was stressing me out.
Right.
Over
Oh, I didn't get
time
no
it
steps today. Yeah.
well and the
I
health
didn't get
side
my
of it,
10,000 steps
you
in.
didn't get
Yeah.
your 10,000 steps, or it was like, hey, your heart rate was above 60 when you were sleeping for the past week. You're like, what's that mean? And you look it
Yeah.
up, you're like, oh,
Oh,
that's
I'm
not
dying.
good. I'm gonna die
I'm
at
dead.
50.
I'm half dead already.
Yeah, and I'm like,
Yeah. No.
this isn't good, man. Like, I was doing all that, and it helped me kind of get healthy because I was able to like monitor stuff. And then I was like, I'm doing all the stuff. I'm doing all the stuff. I'm walking 5 miles a day. I work out 4 days a week, like with weights. Like I'm eating super clean. And I was like, my numbers are getting worse. What is this?
Right.
So I was like, I'm done. I took it off,
Throw it away.
and Sean convinced me to buy a G-Shock. And I had
Okay.
always been a very um I'm always a buy once, cry once type person. Like every piece of equipment in my shop is like relatively expensive because I want to
Right.
buy the best that I can afford and never have
Right.
to buy it again.
Yeah.
So I always had this in my head. Like I almost bought a Milgauss a few years back.
Okay. Cool.
In 2020,
Which would
I
have
had
been
a
awesome.
it would have been dope because it was only like 7 grand and now they're going for like 12. But um maybe they're more now. I have no idea. But it was a good
Right.
price.
Mhm.
And I didn't do it. And I was like, well, if it's not a Rolex, I don't want it because it's not going to be the best. You know,
It's okay.
that was like just a uneducated opinion. And then
Right.
I bought the G-Shock. I'm like, I kind of like these things. This is a sweet watch. Like, it's
Yeah.
got, it's
You don't
got
got to worry about it.
the multi-band. You can bang it around. You're like, oops, I
Yeah.
dropped it in the toilet. Okay, well,
Who cares?
just rinse it off. I
Right.
dropped it off a bridge. Just buy another one. It's $100. Who cares?
Yeah.
And then he convinced me to buy this, and I was still a little like skeptical. So I got, you had it on sale, and I was like, okay, we'll try it out. We'll just see if I
Right.
like an automatic watch. And
Right.
I was stupefied by the amount of detail and
Right.
quality and craftsmanship. Like when I put it on, and I'm not
Mhm.
blowing smoke up your ass. Like when I put this thing on, I'm not used to the weight, right? Because
Right. Right. You
it's
feel it.
it's a weighty watch. You feel it.
Going from a G-Shock.
It's not a
Yeah.
classic shock.
And you're just like, damn, like you got like the nice, the face on it's really nice. The
Right.
crystal's really nice. Like it even feels good, like on your
Yeah.
hand for whatever
Yeah.
reason. Like it's not like doesn't feel like glass,
Mhm.
or plastic.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And I'm like, I'd pay $1,000 for this. Like no joke. Like this is, I mean, I know it's a little high, but like it feels like a super quality watch.
Right.
You got all the little details. Like you got the
Yeah.
rotor in there, like the
Yep.
blue rotor.
Yep.
I don't know where I was going with this, but basically, like, it's interesting how like my opinion has changed because like not being a watch guy,
Yeah.
I prefer to pull this out. Like I'll usually wear this instead of the G-Shock now, and not because
Right.
like it tells time better because it absolutely does not.
Right.
I have a 6 band. What is it? 6 band, solar
5 band.
powered.
Yeah, I get it.
Five.
Yeah, I have a few of those.
And they're dope because like they're perfect. Like if anyone says like, "Hey, you're late," you're like, "No, I'm not. You're late."
Right.
You know,
Exactly. Or you're early. Yeah.
Yeah.
like this is atomic, bitch. Like you're.
Right.
um. Anyway, carry on, Sean, with your question. I'm sorry to interrupt. I had to go down that pathway.
I wear them all though. I mean,
Yeah.
I have everything. So I go down to, I don't even know what my cheapest watch might be. Well under $100, and I have watches that I'm ashamed to say how much they cost. And I wear the expensive ones. I don't wear that much. I wear the cheap
Yeah.
ones. Really,
Yeah.
I mean, wear my own almost every day. But on the other wrist, it could be anything. I'm on a G-Shock hunt lately. I've been wearing Casiopes like crazy. I have
Mhm.
3 Casiopes. I have another G-Shock. I love them. So
Yeah.
yeah, all over
Well,
the
that's
place.
another similarity with your average pipe smoker is
Mhm.
that they like
Yeah.
everything.
Right,
They like their nicer high end stuff, but they can also really appreciate the lower end stuff.
right.
And talking about the Brookville here, I wanted to mention when I got mine, I was blown away with the finishing. I've had a lot of watches with stainless steel bracelets,
Mhm.
and I've had a handful where they've you can tell that they're solid,
Yeah,
but they just don't feel as heavy.
I get it. Yeah.
The edges are not as nice, and on this Brookville,
Mhm.
the bracelet finishing with all the little contours and everything polished on the edges
Yep.
is up there with a I've got a really nice Citizen that I think new was about $1,600.
Wow.
It's replaced. It's an older version of what they now call the Citizen,
Okay.
which now the Citizen that whole line is like over $2,000.
Yeah,
They're
but I
like
say
a
about
Grand
2,000.
Seiko, Mr.
Bracelet
G type stuff.
bracelet
It's like,
finishing, it's the same.
Right. That's
It's
awesome.
as nice as that.
yeah.
I love to
So
hear it.
very impressed.
Thank you. Thank you.
What was your
You know,
question, Chris?
Is that like I forget the name that you just said, but is that like the Grand Seiko, Mr. G? Like it's like, hey, we have this brand, but this is like the higher end brand.
Yeah, so like with the Citizen that I'm talking about, I don't remember exactly what they replaced it with. It was like the Classic series or something,
yeah.
Yeah.
and then it got replaced by the Seiko or the Citizen. And so yeah, it's just a higher finished,
Gotcha. Okay.
much nicer movement, all that kind of stuff. And this Brookville's got a much nicer movement than your average Seiko
It
would.
does than your average Seiko, which is
It's pretty sweet.
yeah.
It is very
And it's a
nice.
Miyota 914 or 915.
That's a 9015.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah. It's what's my
Okay.
it is my favorite movement. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
It's very nice. My question earlier. You're a watch guy, obviously. What is your most worn watch? If
Like ever?
if you average it out over a month or so, what's the one that you grab the most?
It changes
You
all
gotta
the
pick.
it changes all the time.
Can we point out that he's got 2 watches on too? Like that's kind of Mark's thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
I
pretty
mean,
gangster.
I own I think close to 200 watches.
Oh wow.
So there's always an Islander on one wrist. So if you were doing the last month, it would be a Cassiope, without a doubt.
Cool.
I know it. That's definitely what it would be.
Yeah.
And then for the Islander, it would probably be I would guess the Northport. I'm wearing the Northport a lot.
Okay. And that's
But,
a
next month
dive
will be
style?
something different. What's that?
and that's a dive style.
It's a diver, yeah. If it
Very
was
cool.
2 months ago, it was a watch that we did for charity. My wife and I, we have his and hers, and we sold like 134 of them, and we don't.
Oh wow.
154, and we donated all the money to charity.
Very cool.
So we wore that one like crazy. So
Yeah.
it really, really, it's tough when you have that many watches. It's like, I don't know,
They all gotta have some
I'm
love.
sure there's watches that haven't been touched in, could be a year, and they probably get lonely.
Yeah.
But I can tell you what it isn't. It certainly isn't my Rolexes. It's
Yeah.
not my Omegas. It's not my Zins. It's
Yeah.
not my Damascos. It's the other affordable stuff.
Mm-hmm.
What's this is a stupid question, but just because I know I'm not the only one. What is a Cassiope?
It's fine. It's a Casio G-Shock that Casio came out with. I don't know how many years ago. I'm
Ah,
going to say at least 5. I doubt more than 10.
I think
And
right
it
around the time of COVID started.
okay, so there you go. So like 6 years ago, 5 years ago, and it looks like an AP Royal Oak. It
okay,
has that Genta X style like hexagonal case.
okay,
Just Google it on a side tab. Casioak, Casioak, and that's
okay.
it. And it's funny that Casio decided to rip off another company in a way, and they made this line. And it is, I'm addicted. Like I said, I own 3 of the same freaking watch, just in different colors.
They're
My
pretty
wife
Yeah.
cool.
owns, my wife owns one. They're cheap. If you get the non-solar ones, they're super cheap. Get the solar ones, they have Bluetooth built in and stuff, and
Hmm.
accurate as hell.
They're easy to
They're
mod too.
lightweight. What's that?
They're easy to mod.
Yeah, I know people do that too. They sell little mod kits on like AliExpress and stuff, and
Hmm.
I love them. I mean, I hate to say it, but
Yeah, they're thin. They're
yeah,
like
they're awesome.
surprisingly
They're
thin.
lightweight.
Very
They're
comfortable.
plastic. Let's be honest. But what cracks me up about that is that you know, to more in the psychological side of the marketing of it. If a no-name brand came out with that watch, I think they would have been laughed out, and no one would have bought it.
I think so too.
Casio does it, and it's okay. And
Yeah,
that I believe there is a tremendous double standard in the wristwatch industry. I
yeah, oh,
really
yeah,
think there. I think people apply it to me also. If anyone else would have come out with an SKX replacement, they would have been said, "Well, you just ripped off Seiko," and no one would have bought it. But I
yeah,
did it, and because I've been at that point on YouTube for 7 or 8 years and around online for 18 years, there was trust. There was, a totally different kind of response than I would have
Yeah.
anticipated, if Joe Schmo would have done it.
Mhm.
You also changed it enough that it wasn't a ripoff, and they had just
I kept it, yeah, and they
discontinued it.
discontinued it, which obviously was the biggest favor they ever did for me.
Yeah,
yeah.
that's
Well,
awesome.
you're coming at it from a place of reverence too, and I think people get that.
Right.
I
Oh,
I went through been going through some of your videos, and like you do a lot of charity work, and you actually care about the stuff to it, and no offense to like a seriously nerdy level, like
no, I know.
that's awesome because
I'm
that's
an
some of the
engineer.
best.
It's the only level I know.
Yeah, but it's like this almost like a lot of times when you see a lot of pipe makers, they're different categories of pipe makers. So there's like sort of like the nerdy, goofball, like not taking ourselves seriously, but like we care
Got it.
about like the details type of
Right.
shit.
Hmm.
That's You're like one of us in that regard. Like Sean
Yeah.
and I are like that. We get super dorky and like
Yep.
care about things that no one cares about. But then you have like sort of the prima donna level of the artisanal aspect there where people are like, well, I'm trying to think of who you would compare this to in the watch industry, but it'd be like, yes, this is, the people that are genuinely good, but then also know they're good, and then also that comes through, and you're like,
There's a lot of them. I
yeah,
can
I'm
name
sure
them,
there's
but I
plenty.
won't. I won't
Yeah.
say a name because I love most
Yeah,
people
that's
in the
why I'm not saying
most
names.
people in
Like
the watch
it,
space. I've met most of them,
yeah,
and I can easily, I know most. I can name names.
yeah. But
Yeah.
it's the difference in how you carry yourself. Like
Right.
you're hopping on a podcast with two pipe makers, in a hoodie with like your kid's artwork in the background. Like, who
Yeah.
gives a shit?
Yeah.
And that's the kind of like look at my Sean's backdrop is kind of cool, but my backdrop is literally like this is my work that I do.
Yeah.
Um,
No, I
so
know,
there,
man. Believe me. If I was in my office, it would be different. But
that's
this
a
at this time, I wasn't going back to the office. I'm like, I'll just I said to my
no.
wife, I'm just going to do it from your office. She goes, okay.
We'll do it live.
Cool.
This is like I appreciate that because I half not that, if I had not watched your videos, I half expected it to be like a suit behind a desk, that kind of thing. I'm like,
Dude, I
you
don't
know,
even know what my suit is. And
I
here I
don't
said,
even.
my suit. Okay.
I
Yeah.
think a lot of people get scared off though, and I did personally with watches because it's really hard to come to this like conclusion of like no one's going to get a fully handmade watch with any salary with any budget. You're just not going to do
Right.
it. You're not going to get some dude that's going to custom make you a watch because
Right.
that's the top 1% of the 1%. So the best you can do is just get something that's like really
Decent.
good quality and timekeeping,
Right.
and honestly, so much of it comes down to preference at a certain point because a $70 pipe can smoke as well as a $300 or let's say $500 pipe. It can, and they do in most cases, but it's like how much finish do you want?
Right.
How nice do you want it to
Mhm.
look? And that's similar with the watches. Like,
Simple, sure. What's inside and
yeah,
what's outside. How accurate is it, but how does it look? I mean, it's the
yeah,
same. It's kind of the same battle, right?
yeah.
You could have a
Yeah.
beautiful watch that keeps time like crap because you could put a $5 automatic movement in it.
Mhm.
I mean, same thing.
I guess
So
there's a hell of a lot more similarities than I initially anticipated between the two.
yeah,
I'm interested in
there really is.
with pipes because I said I'm an engineer, so I'm thinking about the aerodynamics of the draw, the
Yeah,
orifice sizes,
Mhm.
tapering, what happens, and
Yeah.
I don't know.
that's this. I actually did that with this. I designed
Okay,
this pipe and patented it. Um, to my knowledge, it's the only patented tobacco pipe in the world, definitely in the US.
got it.
Um, and this was actually we had to do a lot of sciencey stuff to get this to work
Right.
optimally. But I went through all that, and later down the road, I worked with a scientist friend of mine. He did all like we did a lot more than that. And of what I can talk about, we did um, what is it? Gas
Uh, uh,
chromatography
chromatography, yes.
on all the pipe making materials.
Oh, cool.
We did all these durability tests in his freakishly expensive and well appointed lab.
Right.
Um, you know, off of company time. So he was kind of like well, I don't know what you would put it. He's a reverse engineer. So,
Right.
3M comes out with an adhesive and this company's like, "Hey, can you make that for
Can
me?"
you make
And then
that for us, please?
he does that.
My
So
Gotcha.
only patent.
he has all the fun sciencey shit.
Got
And
it.
so we started working through like just all this stuff as a potential defense against the FDA regulations that were impending um in what was it, 2017?
Yeah.
Um, so he had like a just stack of papers and had all these like tests for all like the geeks that needed to know the numbers, and we
Got
found
it.
out some pretty crazy things that
Right.
were previously like unbeknownst to the industry about
Right.
the materials. So
Got
it
it.
gets like that if you care about getting like that, but most pipe
Right.
makers don't go down to the science ever.
How do you are you allowed to advertise on like Google and stuff like that? I don't know
Sean knows
where
more
the
about
line
that
is
than I
drawn
do.
on tobacco and not.
It depends.
Hmm.
So like with Instagram and Facebook,
Yeah.
it's a gray area
Yeah.
and nobody really can give you a true answer
Got
because
it.
it's like, oh, well, this post is going against community standards.
Right.
This one's not, even though they're
Yeah.
like the same post.
Got it.
I got a blue check mark, to be fancy. No, I got a blue check mark because I had people like copying my page
Got
and
it.
scamming people.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. You don't
And
want that.
so I needed it like to protect my community because people were like, "Hey, Sean, is this
Right.
actually you trying to sell me this pipe for half
Got it.
price? This seems weird." I was like, "Nope, that's not." So
Right.
um, after I got that, I was able to advertise more, because I'm like established
Gotcha. Yeah.
with like they know I'm a real person.
Right.
So that helped.
Mhm.
It's very AI driven right now as far
Yes.
as like the algorithm. And so
Yes.
if you have certain keywords or certain hashtags, it will get dinged.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I know people who work for Facebook, for
Okay,
Meta,
that helps.
and I've talked to them and they were like, yeah, we're working on it. But if you keep escalating it, you'll eventually talk to a person
Which is what you
and then we'll
want.
review it and see that it's fine. But you still got to be careful. I
Yeah.
mean, I think Chris was doing paid ads for a while and I think they were like suggesting that it's like, hey, you've got a big following. Let's get
Yeah.
you some
All
more
right.
Followers.
Let's
And then you
boost
do
your
it.
post.
And you
Yeah.
do it,
Yeah,
and they would
boost the
slap your
post. And then
hand.
they were
They
like,
hit you.
no, don't do that.
Yeah. If you do this again, we're
So
shutting your account off. But then, like 3 days later, it'd be like, "Hey, this post did really well. Do you want to boost
You
it?" And
want to
I'm like,
boost it?
"Yeah,
yeah.
sure." And then they're like, "Hey, you better knock that shit off." And
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
"Wait, you told me to."
Figures,
Yeah.
right?
It's
So we've
very
got to be careful.
yeah
Facebook is,
for right
we
now.
make sure that we don't make posts about like, well, this is for sale. Here's the price. Most groups have pretty strict rules.
Yeah.
Right.
on that. So it must be nice being in the watch world where you don't really have to worry about that at all on
Yeah,
who
you
you
don't have
market
to, but
to.
there's no fear. But the only fear there is you will doesn't really work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody really listens to it.
We don't even
Yeah.
have the capacity to really fall under the guidelines because we don't retail tobacco in the first place. So that's a
Okay,
Yeah.
big one.
gotcha.
Yeah. We're selling
It's
art. I don't care what people smoke out
yeah,
of it. It's none of my business.
yeah. And
Yeah,
in some case, like there were a lot of people that were like, so what happened was, to clue Mark in, we had a thing that happened towards the end of Obama's term
hmm
where, and this was very quiet. He basically took tobacco was always controlled tobacco only. Pipes were never controlled by anything. Like you could go in and buy a pipe from a store, I think if you were even under 18, like no one really cared.
right.
Um, but he switched control over from ATF to the FDA. And this was around the time that the vaping thing started kind of coming up. And I think it had something to do with that, like with lobbying and kind of weird, people wanted, they had their hand out basically, like,
Right,
we need to make more money off this. We need to control nicotine. We need to, whatever.
right.
And during that time, it kind of, no one noticed that it happened. This was like literally right before he left office. Now in 2017, the FDA put this, they called it the deeming regulations or the deeming act, where they said, now, just so you guys all know, all tobacco and related products, including pipes, charcoal for hookahs, ashtrays, anything that, dude, everything, they control
Yeah,
everything, must have a harmonized code when it ships. We hold the right to seize it when it comes into the country. We can inspect it. We can charge you, a fee for that. And for a while, people were freaking out, man. I had pipe maker
of course.
A
friends, like
lot of people jump ship.
we lost dozens of people. Dozens. Like
I'm
people are just
sure.
like, I can't afford to get arrested. And you're like, but
Right,
why?
right.
You're not doing
I'm
anything
not.
illegal,
Yeah,
And I
Yeah.
had to have a serious like conversation with myself, like, are we gonna play along? Are we gonna like fold? Like, so
right.
they required everyone to register.
Okay.
And how do I put this? Some people tried to register and were not able to because the system wasn't properly designed to
Yeah.
work, you know.
Okay.
Some retailers made their people register to protect themselves, and that's fine
hmm
too. There's nothing wrong with that. Play above board and you never get, in trouble.
Right. Yeah.
Um, the problem is that it never led to anything. So
Got
the
it.
the FDA, and we've had a few friends collectively that have had visits from FDA agents where they would fly them out and they'd
hmm
have to drive to your house and they would come looking around like, what's
And
this?
then
What's
just
this?
poke around and see what you're doing.
And in every circumstance, they're like, yeah, what are you looking for? They're like, yeah, we don't know. We don't know what we're looking
You're
for.
just
And we're like,
here.
what are you
Right.
doing here? This is taxpayer money, bro. Like, what are you doing?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
We don't know what we're looking for. Now, EPA, I get. We have EPA issues in California to where they want to make sure you're not using like the wrong stains or the wrong
Sure. Sure.
for
Sure. Dumping stuff down the drain or whatever.
exactly. And that
Yeah.
I had a scheduled visit from one
hmm
and he showed up and I was I think I was in the backyard and I just didn't know he came, so I just didn't answer the door.
Right.
And then they never came back. But anyway, with the FDA, they don't know what they're looking for. It's not like we're selling nicotine. You know what I mean? It was different. And I think it was intended to regulate people that were mixing vape juice in like their bathtub for a
Got it.
bit there.
Sure.
And so everyone got scared and some people left. Some people just flew under the radar. Some people registered. It was just this kind of whole thing. And everyone looks back now and are like, oh, nothing really happened.
Right.
It was
Yeah.
literally just a massive waste of taxpayer money and people's fear,
Oh.
essentially.
Yeah.
Like got
Right.
people.
Right. Right.
So as far as running ads, like yes, we can kind of run ads if we want, but for the
hmm
most part, it doesn't really help, right? So like there's a concept that Sean and I have gone over for a while. Like we have our potential customer base is significantly smaller than most people would even realize, but for us it's actually quite large
Yeah.
because there's so few of us. For
Right.
someone like you to have our level of customer base, it wouldn't work. That's
Right.
You wouldn't be able to do that. But
I get you.
considering you essentially, I mean, I don't know how many women's watches you carry on your site, but
Fairly interesting.
and it makes sense, right?
Right.
You're able to access potentially half of the population,
Yep.
at least in the
Correct.
States.
Correct.
It's a lot of
Mhm.
people.
Yep.
You probably don't know another pipe smoker, right, Mark? I mean,
I really
Except for Marvin.
I was thinking about it
yeah,
and before, to be honest with you, and I was like, I don't know anybody that I've seen recently smoking a pipe.
yeah, that's our
Yeah.
addressable market. They don't exist. It's like literally point one of the population. Like it's
Yeah,
such a
sure.
small base.
Right.
It's all word of mouth for the most part.
Yeah.
But
Right.
the people who are out there are very passionate about it.
Right. So they're
Yeah.
very dedicated.
Yeah.
Most
Like the
pipe smokers probably have more watches than most watch people do.
Right. I understand. Sure.
Yeah. Yeah,
Interesting.
there's a lot of guys that have like for the bones pipes because they are such an economical product. Like I have customers that have 300. I have a guy that has 500.
But that's got
wild.
to be at that point. That's a collection. That's not.
Yeah. Yeah,
You
they're
can't really.
Pokemon
Yeah.
at that point. They're trying to get all of them, and no one. See, that's the thing it is attainable. It is possible to get all 450 shapes, but there's like maybe going to be 20 guys to ever even have the chance to do that. Like there's too many shapes. Like they're too hard to
Right.
find.
Right.
Yeah.
That's insane. Because I mean, I guess at that point, then what are you doing? You just displaying them? Because like with a watch, yeah, you can kind
They
of wear
smoke
it,
them.
or I guess. But 400 of them?
Oh no, some of
They've
them
got a
some of
they
them
got a
go in.
rotation.
Yeah.
Yes.
Kind of like you were saying, this month you might really be into this one
Yeah.
that's on your wrist,
Right.
and the last month it might be different. There's a lot
Right.
of guys that'll have they'll pick 7 pipes for the week, and they
Mhm.
might smoke those for that week or 2, and then
Got
they'll go dig through some other stuff. I mean, I had a display over here on the wall that I couldn't really reach, and I moved, and now it's like, oh, I can access all these pipes again. So let's go
Got
check
it.
these out.
Got it. Interesting.
So
Yeah. Just
Fascinating.
visiting old friends. It's kind of like that. It's just you take them down and hang out for a little bit, and back in the box you
oh, I
go. And
remember you.
yeah,
Right. Right. Right.
man,
There
there's a
you.
lot of
There
it's
you
Yeah.
a
are.
lot of it's memories too, Mark. Like that's another aspect. Like the guy that graduated college, his dad bought him a watch, or the guy that got a job. I think you mentioned in one of your videos you bought a sub before your kid was born.
Yeah.
It
That's exactly
it
it.
it specifically marks occasions, and I've
Right.
noticed more. This actually goes into a really insane psychological concept where men interact with the world via things, women interact with the world via people, and
Mhm.
so women will remember, hey, remember that time that you and I were at lunch and we had that fun laugh of whatever. Men will
Right.
be like, hey, I remember this time that like my dad gave me a pocket knife because
Right. Right.
I got an A in spelling or whatever. You know what I mean? Like that's
Oh yeah.
how
I
we
remember
as
that. Yeah.
guys
I know what you mean. Yeah.
we
Yeah.
mark occasions.
Right.
I've got a dozen guys that once a year they buy themselves a commemorative birthday pipe.
Okay.
So people will buy pipes for occasions, and they will be smoked for that one occasion,
And that's it.
and that's it. And then it'll be
And next.
passed down.
Wow.
So, Mark, before we let you go, what advice would you give to somebody if they wanted to get into watches for the first time and, maybe expand their collecting repertoire since they're already pipe collectors and tobacco collectors? Maybe they, really
Yeah.
kind of like
No.
the idea of having a
I have a
watch.
very simple philosophy: is buy what you like. Don't
Cool.
look to YouTube or influencers to tell you what is a good watch. If you like, the name that's often trashed around would be Invicta. There's an Invicta that you like, buy it, wear it, because everyone that you meet will not talk down about the watch. They will tell you it looks nice. If you happen to meet a watch snob, don't worry about it. Yeah,
Yeah.
you buy what you like and you make your own. I think it's best to make your own stumbles and errors. Finding, kind of finding your way. It's almost like a wandering drunk, method. And eventually you'll culture yourself, with your own culture. I don't subscribe to the whole, everybody needs to own one of these, or, I say own these 5 watches because they make perfect collection. If you're a diver, I'm a diver guy. Of my 200 watches, I would say probably 175 of them are divers. I mean, most
Oh,
people
wow.
would say you're insane, but that's just
Wow.
I like them.
That's what
Dress
you like.
watches, I don't know, like 5 dress watches.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
if I wear a suit, I'm typically wearing a Rolex. I mean, I'm not wearing a dress watch.
Yeah.
It's just to me what kind of works with it. But yeah, that would be my advice. Follow what you like, wear what you like, and buy what you like. Don't buy what other people tell you to like.
Cool. No, I
Oh
think
man.
that's pretty
Oh,
good.
and never go to
Pipes
debt
are a
over
lot
a
of the same
watch.
way.
Never go into debt. Never.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We
Please.
we actually
same thing with
say that in
pipes.
our business too. Because there's a
Please.
lot of guys for a while that would be like, I'm gonna buy this pipe because it's gonna be worth more later. I'm like, don't do that. That's stupid.
No. No debt, no investments. There's no
Yeah.
investment watches. There's a couple of brands that do appreciate. Rolex is one of them. However, if you would have bought a Rolex 2 years ago, you'd be taking a bath on it right now.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. It amazes me how many people buy something and then get back to us, within a day. It hasn't even shipped yet, or even a week later. The brakes on my car fail. I have to return the watch. I haven't used it yet. I haven't taken it out of the box.
Mhm.
If a brake job is the difference between buying a watch and not buying a watch, don't buy the watch. Wait till you have a little more money to dispose of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't
I
In
know,
the
need it.
meantime,
not really
buy
said
a
like, not really
Casio.
spoken like a guy who runs a business, but that's just the way I am.
We're the same way though. We've had to talk. I've talked people out of pipes before,
Yeah.
or brought them into something more affordable.
Right. Well,
Like
yeah, I get that email too. I want to spend it. I have $1,000 to spend. Here's what I want. And I'm like, well, honestly, you can spend 200 and you can get everything you want. Take the
yeah,
extra 800 and buy another thing, or just put it into the bank.
yeah. This one,
Yeah.
this Upper Brookville was $200, and I'm
Right.
astounded by the quality of it.
Right.
Absolutely
I appreciate it.
flabbergasted. It's
Excellent.
Yeah,
I like
very
fantastic,
that.
man.
nice.
And you have Long Island Watch. Guys, go check it out. LongIslandWatch.com.
LongIslandWatch.com. Yeah.
And you have an amazing YouTube presence too. Like you got to follow this guy. It's just all kinds of watch related content. Like my top
Educational
3.
videos.
Yeah, it's interesting. Super interesting guy, Mark. We really appreciate you stopping by and having a chat with us.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It was a lot of fun. I learned a lot.
Good.
Cool.
Yeah,
Well, I'm glad. I hope our
that's what it's
followers
about.
also have learned a little bit about watches and might want to jump into getting maybe their first real automatic watch. If that's what they like. Or go buy a $10 Casio. That's cool
That's
too.
fine as well.
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right, Mark, thanks again, and we'll chat with you later.
Thanks a lot. Take care.